Stories from the studio, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Michael, the left-handed professional baseball pitcher, part one. This gentleman was not looking to have an affair, not with me or anybody. He was just looking for meaning and to find someone like-minded who could help him on his musical journey. But I tell you what, I could have snoogered him easily out of a very high dollar guitar. Not really what I'm about, but it could have been easily done. At one point, my husband said, "Did you get a guitar out of the guy?" Like, God, you have such a dirty mind. It only took 3 phone calls. Phone call 1. Phone rings, I pick it up. Say, "Hey, this is police, music." And there's a male voice on the other end, and he says, well, even from just one word, I could tell he was well educated and had a good presence about him. After the first word, he goes, well, I Googled, I also heard about you, and I want to start taking some guitar lessons. Wonderful. Great. I say, oh, what's your name? And he goes, my name is Michael. I want to take guitar lessons. I'm struggling. I've been taking some lessons with another guy. My hands don't work. I've got a hand injury. And I'm thinking the whole time, let's get some more information. I ask him, what are you playing? Are you interested? He said, well, I really want to learn how to play classical guitar. All right, so here's how this goes. I have been a career teacher for a long, long, long time. And it's really easy for me to take a teenager who's wanting to come in and learn classical. Easy peasy, I love doing it. I've been a piano teacher for about 40 plus years as well, and that's fun too. Um, uh, so when Michael said he wants to learn how to play classical guitar, I think to myself, all right, this could be. I said, Michael, that's really not something I'm not that kind of. I think you could probably have a better fit with a different teacher. I can refer you to a couple of folks. And he was not very happy about that. He said, well, I'm disappointed. And we ended the conversation kind of uncomfortably. And that's how it went. That was the end of call number 1. A day goes by. Ring, ring goes the phone. I pick it up. This is Lise with Music. And he says, oops, I think I made a mistake. I called you. He said, I've talked with a lot of teachers. I've taken notes. I, I, I just made a mistake and I dialed your phone. And I'm really sorry. And he hung up. He just kind of hung up the phone. I said, okay, that's how that goes. Well, later on that evening, after my whole bank of students, I think I had 10 students that day, probably about 8 o'clock at night, ring, ring goes the phone. It's the third phone. And he calls again and he says, this is Mike. I know I'm calling you again. Did I really got a good feeling about you? You seem like a really nice person. I don't have to take classical guitar lessons. I just want to learn, and I think you're going to be a fit for me. Can I please come and take music lessons? Miss Lise. Said, okay. That works. Let's let's figure out a time for you to come in. So we figured out a time for the next week when his lesson would be. Kind of scheduled it before other students were coming in, so I would have plenty of time to spend with them. That was the first lesson. So again, didn't anybody tell you it's never too late to try? Hold the line before you say goodbye. And he didn't ever let me say goodbye. So that's the very beginning of a wonderful, almost 3.5 years of teaching a wonderful music that I would never have given a chance because, frankly, I didn't want to work that hard to try to teach somebody who was more of a senior how to read music. I just didn't want to do it. Turned into the wonderful. The next week, he comes in for his lesson. He called to confirm that we were still on. And I'm kind of waiting. I'm looking out the window and I can drive. I had a really neat piece of property, big round, kind of a U-shaped driveway, and my little house was way back off. A little tricky to navigate for a first. I watched him pull into the driveway. I see him like peeking out the window, looking, and then he kind of had a funny little twitch, and then he drove out. He drove out the driveway. He just left. I watched him kind of pull out and do a little U-turn, and he came back, and I kind of waved him. We went to the back of his car. I noticed he had a real nice vehicle. I think it was kind of a some kind of nice. And he opened the trunk of the car and pulled the guitar out. And at this point, I was starting to get clues about it. Because when you take a new student, you don't really. It takes a while to get to know. So I watched him kind of struggle to get the trunk up, and then he pulled this beautiful guitar, real nice looking case out. And I said, "Look, let me help you with that." And as we were walking up my front steps, I could see he was kind of limping. So I grabbed onto his arm and held his arm. And that's when I realized this gentleman is a very huge man. He had to have been at least 6'5". And he wasn't like a skinny little rail. He's really a gigantic man. So I helped him in through my front door and we put the case down. He kind of got a fun little, testy little look on his face. And he said, "Let me show you my." Okay. So he goes, beautiful, like a beautiful tailor. I can see the hip. It's just, wow, Michael, this is gorgeous. Yeah, I have a bunch of it, kind of a collector. So that gave me some clues too, as a little bit more. As he was showing me his knowledge of the string, I could see that his left hand was pretty gnarly, and it looked like he had arthritis very badly. So I was uh, watching how his hand movements were, his body language, to get a better feeling for what kind of student I'm with. Learning how to play classical guitar is not the same thing. A 15-year-old coming in who wants to learn how to play some white stripes, some rock and roll. Uh, it's not the same thing. A whole different skill level. Now, I have a choice. I could try to teach this guy how to read a little music. I can teach this guy how to play some of these things through tablature. He doesn't really understand any of that. So we went over to the piano and we sat and I showed him the piano and I said, "Your guitar string, all your 6 strings are basically a piano keyboard. So your low E is a piano keyboard. Your next, your 5th string is the A is a piano keyboard. It's just starting on. Notation for the guitar is all in the treble clef. And that brings in a whole other set of issues that are very hard, probably for a senior person who may have some eyesight issue. When you're looking at the treble clef staff, as soon as you get past 5, you're going to be looking at ledger line. And I'm not going to go in and explain all that, but it starts to make learning how to play any kind of notes above, let's say, fret 3, kind of complicated, difficult, especially for someone. This was enough information for me to get a real good start with planning some strategy for Michael. He seemed like a very lovely man, very well educated, very well spoken. So we'd already been talking for about a half an hour. We wrapped it up. He wrote me a check for the month, and he paid the registration fee and he paid the materials fee. And we put that beautiful tailor back in case, and I helped him out the front door and held his arm because he just seemed like he was like crippled, like maybe there was a knee injury or something like that. So I held his arm down the steps. We went. We loaded his guitar into the car, and we'd already decided when he was going to come back for his lesson, and he drove off. And that's how that went. So I tell you, that whole next week, I'm not going to say I stressed, but I really had to think about what were we going to work on. So I I went to the music store and I got Hal Leonard's basic guitar method book. Started looking through a bunch of my music, looking for maybe some structured classical one-liner sonatinas, songs like Spanish Romance, Lagrima, maybe an Andante in C, possibly some kind of E minor, little study in E minor. Started looking through my method books to come up with a good lesson. So he had concrete things to work on. After several weeks of lessons, I suggested to him that he get on the computer. I told you about that I use Music Ace Maestro for my younger students for theory and ear training. I also had Alfred Essentials. He did not want to do that. He just wanted to come for one-on-one lessons. As we got to know each other, I learned a bunch of things about this gentleman. The first thing I the first thing I learned was that he has a crabby Appleton wife. Her name is Patty. She is a crabby Appleton. She doesn't want to do anything. She doesn't want to go anywhere. She wants to stay home all the time. So I started to learn that this was one of his ways to kind of get out of the house. Now, this guy, I'm thinking he was probably 74, 75 at that point. I hadn't asked him his age yet. I was 62. So as we got to know each other, I started to get the kind of feeling that maybe I was his lovely girlfriend away from home. I was the younger female, had a lot of energy. I'd been working with kids. I think he caught the energy bug, and it made him feel alive. As we got to know each other more, I started to learn that he was a guitar hoarder. He's one of those guys who's got like 12 guitars all lined up on the wall, and they're all very high dollar. I'll tell you more about that in a minute. We started to kind of steer away sometimes from the lesson. He struggled with his hands. His hands hurt. His fingers weren't doing it. Could do maybe a one finger kind of thing. I knew probably within the first 4 or 5 lessons that there was no way he was ever going to. He was just not going to be able to get it to work. Plus, I also noticed that the guitar, the scale of the neck, probably was too thin for him. He was a giant man, and his hands were just giant. And that's when I started even learning more about this. He, back in the day when he was a young man, he was a left-handed professional baseball pitcher. And that's why he had crippled. He was crippled. His hands were crippled from this career that he. So I started to notice that we had some things of interest in common. So we started kind of getting away from the lessons a little bit. We would do the lesson, what I had planned, but then it would kind of diverge into talking about money, and then it diverge again into talking about this crappy wife. So after about 2 months of lessons with him, we changed the lesson. I felt that it was more in our best interest to have like an hour and a half lesson. I didn't bill for it. There was no way, I billed for the 45-minute lesson, and he would come in at, I don't know, 10:30 in the morning, and he would have an hour and a half, 2 hour lesson, but it wasn't a lesson. It was talking about money and, complaining about people in town. And there was a little bit of politics. We were kind of aligned politically, and I just got so much out of this very smart individual. And I think he liked coming to my house because I was the lady and not his wife. And laughed. I laughed. We really enjoyed each other. And I told my husband, I said, this fellow Michael, he's a great. Let me tell you this. Michael took lessons with me for 3.5 years. And he barely learned how to play anything. He really didn't play. I knew He was never going to play chords. I couldn't teach him green sleeves or anything. There was nothing I could teach him. His hands wouldn't work. And then he also had memory issues. So it was kind of like the movie, the movie Groundhog Day. It was kind of like Groundhog Day. Uh, we kind of repeated the same lesson over and over and over, which just made my heart full, made my heart just full. No stress. Wonderful person to have coming. Here's where the story progresses, and we go deeper into the really fun part of working with John. He shows up at lesson. It's, I don't know, 10:30. He shows up and as always, I go down the steps. I help him get the trunk open of the car. And instead of just the one guitar, he's got two. He says, I got something I want to show you. So he carries one in, I carry another one in. And this second guitar, he's got the regular Taylor that's beautiful. The second guitar is a very high-end mark. I think it was a triple, something I would just die. And he said, why don't you play it? So I play a little bit. He liked to listen. And at the end of, we do our regular lesson. At the end of the lesson, he says to me, why don't you keep this? Why don't you keep this guitar at the house? And this week, if you want to get it out, go ahead. So this is the beginning of this big, huge, crazy thing that happened. The next week, he comes in with a third guitar. I don't even remember what, some high dollar. He wants to show that to me. He'll tell me what it cost. Then he had something customized on it. He had the frets customized into jumbo frets. So I know that he's got dough and and then with this third guitar, he goes, Lise, would you keep both of these? Would you keep both these guitars for a while? I'm like, Michael, I don't know. I feel uncomfortable. I feel uncomfortable about that. Please, would you just hide these two guitars at your house for a couple of weeks? And I said, what's going on? I am a guitar collector. I'm addicted. I can't help it. I just am on a thing. And if my wife, Patty, sees that I've got more guitar cases at the house, he says, I'm just going to be frank with you. She is going to force me to buy her that outdoor patio set that she wants. That's like $4,000. So you want me to be a criminal along with you while you buy expensive guitars you're sneaking and buying? Yes, that's what he said. I told my husband, I said, look, you're going to see guitars laying around the house. I'm hiding these high dollar expensive purchases that Michael is addicted to buying and hiding from his wife. So Daddy's like, he said, okay, don't tell me. I want to hear about it. Well, another couple of weeks goes by and Michael goes to the next level. He says, can I have Amazon deliver the most expensive guitar I've ever bought to your house? You know what kind of dilemma that is? I'm like a partner in crime. I gotta tell you, this turned into like the craziest thing. I had guitars everywhere. If I'd have been a real cheat and a scandalous scamp, I could have ended up with one of those 15. But I'm just, and I felt so guilty doing this. One day, for some reason, I ended up calling his home to get a hold of him for some reason. And Patty answered the phone. And I said, hey, Patty, it's Lisa. You know, your husband's guitar teacher. I think I'd had him on maybe about 6 months. We still really hadn't learned much of anything, but, we were enjoying each other's company. And she goes, Lisa, I'm going to say something. I've never met her. Because I'm going to say something. Like, what is that? Because my husband loves his guitar life. It is changing his life. He is happy. It's giving him a very high quality of life. So I very much appreciate that. She said, in kind of an angry voice, if I didn't know that this was something that was very much improving my husband's life, I'd be jealous as hell of you. I took a moment. Wow. So I thought, what can I say back to Patty that's really snarky? So I said, look, I don't have any interest in your husband. I don't have any interest in your old man. I said, I have got my own old man to deal with. And that was the end of the conversation. All of a sudden, we're all getting hooked up together. It just turned into really fun stuff. So me and Michael continued as partners in crime, and he would have a Amazon package sent to my house, and and then, and then I started hiding his guitars in my house from my husband. Because Danny would say, "What's this guitar? What's this one? What's this one?" Finally, at some point, we had to nip this in the bud, and I nipped it in the bud. We called this off. That's how Michael's guitar collecting addiction turned into mine. His instruments were so beautiful. It was unbelievable. I hate to say it, but there is no fantastic $15,000 tailor that is going to make you play any better if you're not able to play. If you're not able to be musical or you've got a physical disability, a very, very expensive, high dollar guitar. So, what's the takeaway here for a new teacher? The takeaway is you don't know anything about your new student until you get to know them. It takes, that's why the damn Yankees song, it's never too late to try. I love Ted Nugent. I know he's a bad, you know, but I love Ted Nugent and I like Tommy Shaw. Their song, Hold the Line, one. Didn't anybody tell you it's never too late to try? And that's my older gentleman. He wanted to try, and we tried, and it was just a wonderful experience. So, take a look at the Alora Little Miss Stinker story. This little stinker, she lasted with me for 5 lessons. Michael, the older gentleman, lasted with me over 250 lessons. Over 250 lessons. He learned, he enjoyed the whole journey. He still could barely play, but he left with love in his heart for music. Also, if you are really wanting to learn how to teach, go to the playlist. Go to the playlist, Teach Music Step by Step. It's fabulous. 40 plus years of, and I have a lot to share. The reason behind the stories from the studio, the good, the bad, the ugly, are stories that might resonate. As you take on more and more students, you might find that the student that you didn't want to have is actually the student that became your most favorite person to work with. And the student that you thought you would have for years lasted 5 lessons. So get ready for part 2. I'm going to film that now. Michael, the left-handed professional baseball pitcher with hands that just wouldn't. And he loved the. You're not alone. We all experience this as teachers. And the more time you work with new people, the more you'll learn how to go with the love. Guys, I've had some wonderful students. I've had some horrible students too, but the wonderful students I thought maybe would last for a couple of months, and they've lasted for 3.5 years. And then the other students that I thought would last for years and years and years and years literally lasted 5 days. Lesson learned. If you find that you end up with a student who is willing to pay you for your time, it doesn't necessarily have to be a music lesson. You will learn how to navigate that and enjoy getting to know your students.